So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Cabinet meeting this afternoon. We have a number of very important initiatives contained in the agenda. But first of all, I'm going to take any apologies. Alex?
No apologies, Chair.
No apologies. Any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Do we have any public questions or petitions?
None.
Thank you. And if we can go to item 4, which is pages 5 to 10, the minutes of the previous Cabinet meeting held on the 8th of July. Are there any amendments or corrections to those minutes? Can I therefore sign them as a true record? Thank you. So we then move on to item 5, which is in the name of Councillor Stannard, City Centre Public Space Plan. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, this is an important document in many, many ways. This council has long been ambitious for high quality public space in the city centre, and there are many reasons for this. Living, working and socialising in and around high quality public spaces makes you feel good about being in these spaces. They add to your enjoyment and quality of life. They're good for your physical and mental health. They enable you to be proud of where you live and work, and they are spaces and places you will return to again and again. This is very much a foundation of Norwich's success as a place to live, work, shop and socialise. Norwich is a destination for so many people for so many reasons. It has a well-preserved ancient street plan, countless well-preserved and still used ancient and historical buildings. Alongside this, it has high-quality modern buildings and public space, cheek by jowl, but in perfect harmony with the ancient, Millennium Plain and the Forum building being the immediate obvious example. Norwich also has a wonderful array of culture which draws people from far and wide, be it the museums, the theatres, the music venues, the art galleries, or the variety of food offerings from around the world. This is very much the identity of Norwich and part of what it makes it such a very special place. It is also a fundamental part of the Norwich brand, which makes it distinctive and attractive to incomers and investors. So Norwich has been very successful over the years in maintaining this special environment. From the pedestrianisation of the first street in the UK in the late 60s, through to the widespread pedestrianisation of the city centre today, the council has worked to maintain and improve this environment. Prior to the pandemic, the city centre was vibrant and thriving and was bucking national trends for footfall. But the pandemic, the lockdown, the move to more online shopping and the reduction in the numbers using bars, restaurants and theatres because of social distancing rules has threatened the continuation of its success. This plan draws together many strands of existing plans for the development of the city centre in direct response to this challenge and to ensure there is an overall overarching coordinated response which is in keeping with the principles of the Norwich 2040 vision to regenerate open spaces, to move to low emission and affordable transport, to encourage physical activity, especially walking and cycling, and for the retail and leisure sectors, maintaining a balance of local independence and national trains. It also supports the New Anglia LEP's local industrial strategy and the Norwich BID retail strategy. The aim is to help the city centre's recovery from COVID-19, linked with the council's recent published COVID recovery plan. Draw together many planned interventions in one place and communicate this to the outside world, and also to support the application for Towns Fund monies, the subject of another paper on today's agenda. There are examples within the report of case studies which bring the vision to life, those being Tombland, Under the Flyover and Duke Street Riverside. The plan also recognises, as previously mentioned, that high quality public spaces are not just static places where people want to be. They're places which people can navigate and which encourage and enable people to live healthy, rich and rewarding lives. So there are sections on walking, cycling and wayfinding. The locations of the planning processes and funding for the various schemes are varied. There's Transforming Cities Fund, the New Anglia LEP, Community Infrastructure Levy, sections 106 and 278 monies and developer contributions. This is another reason for the plan to bring all these strands together in one place and to place them in mutual context. So colleagues, this is not a new strategy. It combines existing work and it aims to bring it together coherently to aid planning and delivery. This is an important and exciting document which builds on a proud history in this council of delivering on its ambition for high quality public space. It builds on existing diverse but complementary plans and draws them together into a coherent plan and common context. It explains therefore how they relate to one another. It will help support the city's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact on the city centre, and it will greatly assist in our efforts to attract suitable inward investment and external grant funding. It also will help to ensure the continuation of a high quality environment for our citizens to live, work and socialise in, and for visitors to enjoy and return to, and I commend it to you.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that very good, concise summary of this very imaginative report. As you say, it links in with other reports we have this evening and other initiatives that we have currently underway. So any officer comment at all on this at the moment? Graham?
I have nothing to add to Councillor Stonard's very full introduction. I will happily answer any questions, though, if anybody has any.
Okay, thank you very much. Any cabinet colleagues want to ask any questions on the report? No? Okay. Sandra, did you have a question?
I do have a question, yes.
Yeah, ask it.
It's very clearly a timely and very welcome document that draws together a number of different areas of work, and it's really, really helpful, not only for elected members, but also for stakeholders. So I think it's a really good document, and I'd like to thank officers who've pulled this together. I was just wondering, in my opinion, this theme that is missing is one that highlights green infrastructure. I know that shrubs and trees are mentioned, but I was wondering whether it's possible to extend it to a theme around green infrastructure that shows this important aspect, because it will help increase biodiversity, contribute to the attractiveness of the city, the well-being of residents, and obviously to the environment as well. And it will form an important strategic element to prevent surface flooding. So green surface area will be very important going forward in the future. So I was wondering whether that could be added as a theme to show some of the good work that is being done in Norwich, for example, through Norwich in Bloom, but also include maybe some forward-looking strategies around green roofs, green walls, bench planters, things like that.
I mean, there's certainly some merit, I suspect, in referencing other complementary strategies, the sorts of things that are in Councillor Packer's portfolio, for example, just to sort of exemplify that. But Mike, did you want to add anything, or Graham, in response?
Do you want me to just comment briefly on that? The green infrastructure assets within the city centre, as they exist as standalone assets, are referred to in relation to the open spaces thing, because we always think there's a use of effectively non-green open space as well, as alongside the green open spaces. When we look at green infrastructure more generally, though, we tend to take a slightly wider approach than the city centre, because clearly we've as a city, we're quite well blessed with certain parks and gardens, and we've also got the obviously Mousehold Heath, the River Valley, particularly to the south of the river, that all builds up into a wider picture of green infrastructure. So where we would look at green infrastructure, our tendency would be to look at it over a slightly wider geographical area than the city centre when you're looking at green infrastructure, and also consider particularly the River Wensum strategy and how the River Wensum can play into that green infrastructure link. But I take the point that, you know, green infrastructure within the city centre is important in its own right.
Thank you, Graham. Mike, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, obviously environmental issues were intended to be implicit in the document, and you know, this is a debate we've had before, I think. But I do think if there are elements of green infrastructure that we can reference and wider pieces of work that can be referenced, then we could do that in the appropriate section of the plan. I'm I'm always loath to take a plan and have a separate environmental or green section, because that kind of suggests that it's a standalone issue, whereas actually it ought to be something which permeates everything we do. It should be something that's underpinning. So, I mean, I would suggest not to introduce it as a theme, but to look at any related green infrastructure, environmental infrastructure, and then reference that in the appropriate section, I think would be the way to do it, personally.
Okay, right. Thank you, Mike. Okay, with those remarks, can we go to the recommendation? Are we happy to accept the report? Thank you. Hands up, yes, if we could all put our hands up. So that's clearly registered for purposes of public broadcasting and clear democratic accountability. Can I just ask at this stage, just in terms of the organisation of the agenda, which of course is in two halves and below the line items, will there be any further questions that anybody has on the technical papers which are below the line on this report? I mean, there may be questions that occur to people during the course of this part of the meeting, and that doesn't preclude those questions being asked, but it was just useful to get a sense of whether there were any specific questions. Okay, I'll note that. Right, can we then move on to item 6, which is page 33, which is the grant of right to buy 1-for-1 receipts. That's in the name of Councillor Harris. Gail, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Waters. In an ideal world, this council would be able to spend all of our retained right to buy receipts on building new social housing. However, because of the onerous restrictions placed upon their use by this Tory government, councils across the country have difficulties in doing just that. Perhaps one day this Tory government will wake up to the fact that they need to help local authorities to build homes and communities rather than hindering them. But perhaps that might be a step too far for Boris and his team at the moment. However, sometimes other opportunities arise for us to spend some of this money, and I hope that you will welcome and support the 2 recommendations in this paper. Firstly, we want to award broadband housing funding from our 1-for-1 replacement receipts to support the development of 10 affordable dwellings. This is part of an exciting project to provide accommodation and support for people leaving prison, and we know that we have the need for this in Norwich. We have the chance to make a positive difference to people's lives with a home and support to be provided so that there is a route out of reoffending. I do not want you to underestimate the amount of work that has gone into the preparation of this project. It is another example of this council's really strong partnership working. In the first instance, this is with Broadband Housing, who will provide the accommodation and the housing management. However, we all know that with this project merely providing somewhere to live, this will not be enough. And once again, our partnership working has played a big part. Our Housing Partnership Officer has worked closely with the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Ministry of Justice, and has secured revenue funding for 2 years for the wraparound support aspect of this project. I have to take this opportunity to thank him for his patience and persistence in achieving this. This support will be delivered by the National Probation Service, Norfolk and Suffolk Community Rehabilitation Company and St Martin's Housing Trust, whilst at the same time clients will be able to access wider support services and mentoring according to each person's needs. Fuller details can be found on page 36, but the focus is around the individual's needs. It is about support. This is a groundbreaking project for Norwich. Then we move on to the second proposal, which is funding for a project to convert office space into 2 additional self-contained crash bed spaces within the Ymca Hostel. During the year 2019 to 20, 38 young people used the crash bed service. Many of these young people have very complex needs, and it's encouraging that 79% of the people who use these beds moved into more permanent accommodation afterwards. The Ymca have identified an increased need for this type of accommodation. Again, this illustrates the strength of partnership working, as referrals and nominations will be made through a combination of all partners in the Pathways project, which of course includes the council. In this case, we would be providing funds from our retained right to buy receipts and Section 106 commuted sums. Although this is a project which would need planning approval, the actual conversion could be delivered at speed within a month. So I move to the 2 recommendations and ask for your support. Officers might want to add to my summary, but once again, I have to thank them for the tireless work that they put into bringing these 2 proposals to the table. There is an exempt appendage which relates to this report later in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gail. Anything to add? Would that be Chris? Andrew?
I don't have anything to add. That's captured it, really. Thank you. And thanks for the comments.
Anything to add, Andrew?
Wholeheartedly agree. I think that was comprehensive.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, any questions from Cabinet colleagues on these recommendations or on the report? That was a thumbs up, was it, Councillor Stannard? Excellent. Okay, but I'm going to ask whether Councillor Bergerline would like to ask any questions on this report.
I do have a question, yeah. I'd first like to say that clearly both suggested programmes have to clearly be endorsed. They will make an invaluable contribution to the existing housing need in the city. The development of accommodation and support for people leaving prison is so much needed and is really so long overdue. This was a glaring gap we've known this for a number of years now, and you may know that my colleague Martin Schmierer was especially passionate about this and has raised it in many times. So from research, we know that the community can play a central role in support programs, and that community support can lead to better outcomes when it comes to these post-prison programs. I was therefore wondering whether the Council and Broadland Housing are envisioning this as a community-based program with the involvement of the local community, and what kind of public engagement is planned to find a suitable location for the program.
Okay.
Could I ask Chris to come in on this one for me, please?
No, happy to. In terms of the location of the properties, we are looking to provide them across the city, so there isn't going to be a pepper potted is the word that we would use. In terms of the support, they will be provided by a support worker that works for St Martin's Housing Trust, but they will obviously tap into the wider community in terms of what support is available out there, whether that's within Pathways Norwich or much more sort of community-based projects like the Feed, which also operate programs for people who are, say, for example, for some of these people will be looking to get back into the workplace, to provide them with opportunities there. So it depends on the individual really, and what their needs are, and it's about the flexibility that the support offer can provide. So there isn't a kind of a one-size-fits-all approach really, and I think that's the learning that we've got from other projects, is that it's very much about what the needs of the individual are. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Chris. So any further comments? Right, can we go to the recommendations on page 33? Recommendations 1 and 2, are we happy to agree those? Put your hands up, please. Clearly see that. Thank you. Good. And again, can I ask whether at this stage there are likely to be any questions on the technical below the line report? Okay, once again, if people think of something, they're quite entitled to ask it when we go below the line, but that's very helpful. Thank you very much. So now we move on to item 7, which is the Norwich Townsdale bid, which is in my area of responsibility. And welcome Ellen Tilney, who's joined us. The Townsdale bid, we've reached the point at which we are wanting to make a submission in the first wave of these bids. On page 46, there's a little bit of background history. This was something launched by the government in November 2019, inviting 101 towns. Now, Norwich is not a town, but for the purposes of chasing £25 million, I'm happy to accept the designation for the purposes of this particular piece of work. So it was a possibility for 101 towns to bid for up to £25 million. There was a need to achieve long-term economic and productive growth, and the need to put that together in a Towns Deal investment plan. And in terms of defining the area covered by this process, it was the built-up area of Norwich, as defined by the Office for National Statistics. And there is a map link appended to that. If one takes a look at the timetable from the 19th of December through to the point which we have virtually reached, which is the 31st of July, when we wish to submit our bid, it has been a very intensive process. It has required the establishment of a Towns Deal board chaired by a member of the local business community, and drawing on a cross-section of stakeholders from across Norwich and the surrounding areas. And those arrangements were put in place in February of this year, and it's met on a monthly basis and has worked up a number of proposals to fit the criteria and the aspirations that the Towns Deal funding is set to achieve. And at this stage, I would like to thank very much the hard work of officers in the team, and I say, it's a team, but in particular the work that Ellen Tilney has done, and also working alongside Graham Nelson. There'll be others to thank, of course, but actually their role has been absolutely vital in the coordination of the work programme. I'd also like to thank Andrew Darnley, who has very skillfully chaired the Towns Deal board, and all of the stakeholders who have added their enthusiastic support. So the timetable takes us to the 31st of July. There's a small amount of work left to do, just to do the final preparations to bid, hence the recommendation around delegated authority as part of the recommendations. And then you can see that the proposals will be tested by a government team, an initial gateway process of up to 2 months, then followed by a second gateway process, which is up to 12 months. And then there will be the funding released for all or some elements of the proposals that are being put forward. So there are three key objectives. One is urban regeneration, planning and land use. The second is skills and enterprise infrastructure. And the third strand is connectivity. And the Towns Deal board is going to remain in place to oversee the delivery of the programme. So this is a long-term commitment by our partners and the officer team that have been working and will continue to work on this. And there will be regular updates on the council website, and it will be regularly reported back into Cabinet to keep people informed as to the progress that has been taken. So there are a number of points made about how the grant will be paid. Norwich is the lead council, and so there'll be a careful business appraisal and monitoring of the funding streams and delivery. And again, there is a below the line detailed annex looking at those specific elements. But just a few words about projects. A number of projects have grown out of the 2040 vision themes. In fact, I sit on the board as the co-chair of Norwich 2040 and representing those values, and Councillor Mike Starnard was the City Council representative. And it's really good to be able to see tangible things flowing from the aspirations that people across the city and stakeholders and different communities have had in terms of how they want to see the city develop over time. So what's come through in terms of specific projects? So the first element is an advanced construction and engineering centre to be constructed at Norwich City College. That will require some new facilities, refurbished facilities, and an apprenticeship programme with opportunities to develop skills around advanced clean engineering, advanced construction and civil engineering, and an emphasis on low carbon transport, and an opportunity for people to learn those skills, including things like digital engineering. But it's an opportunity for young people, new people coming into the world of work to get what will hopefully be well-paid and long-term jobs. But it's also an opportunity for people who are in the existing job market looking to start a new career or to enhance their skills. And a related element, again, at the City College is the Ditchy Tech Factory, which again is looking for making sure that skills shortages are to be addressed, but also to provide employment in new growth areas. And that really is kind of central to the economy moving forward in terms of meeting new needs and enhancing productivity. Brownfield sites, of which we have a number, funding to unlock those brownfield sites, and with the ambition of delivering energy efficient and modern homes, as well as workspaces. Very important that we have that as part of the core city offer as well, again, with the intention of growing the economy. And a new digital hub will refurbish a city centre space to develop new startups and grow space for digital businesses, which is particularly important. This is a very successful sector, but there is a need for that sector to have accommodation to expand into. East Norwich has been a feature of a number of reports to Cabinet, and again, the funding from the Townsville bid is intended to accelerate the regeneration of East Norwich to create a new high quality urban quarter. The master planning for that is the next task, and that clearly is going to be sort of central to designing something which creates, I think, something in the order of 6,000 jobs and 4,000 new homes, but a new base for long-term growth. And then there's the connectivity elements and work in partnership with the Business Improvement District to establish a digital platform to act as a gateway for new businesses and people to understand what the city offers, and also to generate some new social innovation networks. And then again, picking up on what Councillor Stannard has been saying about the public space elements, to look at connectivity, to be able to navigate the city, to enhance its green infrastructure, as well as its public spaces, managing lower car emissions, new walking and cycling connections as part of that livability strand, which is part of Norwich 2040, and also access for everybody in terms of access in a sense of fairness and equity and equality. And then the halls, a multi-purpose building, has been used, of course, as a food hub during the height of the pandemic. But there's an opportunity, I think, really to refurbish this venue, make it a state-of-the-art art-making space for collaboration, but also crossing over with partnerships between culture, digital and tech. So this is a really ambitious and effective use of up to £25 million. It relates to aspirations that people across the city have for Norwich. It also touches on and is integrated with many of the other initiatives that we've been developing over the past few years, and of course is embedded in the recovery plan which the Chief Executive wrote, and we had at previous cabinet meetings and full council recently. So, subject to cabinet approval, we will then move forward to establish the heads of terms, and there's more work to be done for the next 2 or 3 months. But the good thing is that we are in the first tranche of cities that have put forward Townsdale proposals, and I think this holds us in good stead. And it's only, as I say, because of the commitment and the energy put in place by officer colleagues and also by the steering committee of the Town Field Board that we have been able to get to this point. And the further information at this stage, there is no cost to the council, no financial outlay, though I have to say, if you added up the number of hours that have been put into this work and put a monetary factor against it, that's been a considerable contribution. But as the negotiations develop, as different elements are accepted, then issues around match funding and so on will come forward in due course. So I very much hope that this will be a report accepted by Cabinet to go forward for its final touches, and that the recommendation is the delegation of authority to the Director of Police, Graham Nelson, and to myself as leader of the council to submit the town investment plan by the 31st of July. Right, so I'll open it up to any questions or comments. Mike?
I won't say too much. I've had enough to say already so far this meeting on similar related topics, but just to say this is really important and exciting project and piece of work, and one can't underestimate or understate, should I say, the significance and importance to this for the positive future development of the city as we would like to see it. It's really exciting to have access to this level of funding and the wide range of important investments that can be made as a result. So I'm very, very much in support, of course, and I'm very excited by it.
Thank you very much, Mike. Kevin?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I can go through every one of those items and identify how they will contribute to our move towards carbon neutrality. It builds wonderfully, but of course, it does so not in isolation. It does so in a way with the holy trinity of social and economic. So I'm really pleased with this.
Thank you. Okay. Ellen, is there anything you'd like to add at this stage?
Alan, perhaps I can just add from an officer perspective, the reason we've been able to move this forward at the pace that we have is largely down to the pre-existing city vision 2040 that not only has given us a sort of an agreed set of objectives and priorities about which we can coalesce this bid around, but has also given us a mechanism through which we can engage with a wide range of stakeholders with a very considerable level of overlap between that and what was required of government through the Town Investment Board. As we've gone through this process, we've had an ongoing engagement with both the MHCLG and also various sets of consultants that have been brought in to advise them. And the decision we've had to make is whether we think we can go at the July tranche or whether we needed to take further time in preparing the bid, in submitting it either in October or December. The view that the board as a whole took when it last met on Monday was that the advantages of going as early as we reasonably could could substantially outweighed the risks in doing that. And whilst clearly there would be further benefit in trying to finesse things before submission, the feedback that we've got from government throughout this process is that compared to the vast majority of these 101 places that we are in the same process of, we are far more advanced, and so they have been encouraging us to submit at that early stage. And the final thing I just wanted to bring to the members' attention was, I think there's two matters where the delegated powers that we're seeking will probably need to be used in relation to the emerging town investment plan. Arising from the meeting on Monday of the town board, there was a request that we amend some of the text to refer to some of the existing partnerships that we have in place around infrastructure and planning, particularly around the Greater Norwich Growth Board and the arrangements we have for pooling SIL and delivering infrastructure. And I'm happy to report that we've had a letter of support for the emerging plan now from our adjoining councils to accompany the plan submission, following reaching agreement on that wording, which I'll run you through in the coming days under the delegated powers. And the final thing to bring to your attention is that MHCLG has also made available a further pot of up to £1 million for accelerating delivery in relation to the town investment plan. Now, when we've only received relatively short notice of this, and we thought, when we were first told, we thought that we had a bit longer to submit it, but the advice that we've received at the start of this week means we're told it's very advantageous to be able to submit this to government at the same time as this bid goes in at the end of this month. We're just finessing those proposals at the moment for things that we will be able to deliver within this particular calendar year, hopefully with the idea of building some momentum into this process so that we'll be able to deliver a range of things should the funding be approved within this financial year, particularly to kickstart some of the recovery from the impacts of COVID-19, but then use that to build momentum into this longer term and hopefully more ambitious programme of economic recovery.
Thank you very much, Graham. That's very helpful. Ellen, is there anything you would like to add, since you are working very closely on this throughout?
Yeah, I was stuck on mute before. I do apologise. Yes, it's just to say that I think it's a really exciting opportunity for the city to deliver some of the things that we've long wanted to do, but haven't, had the opportunity in terms of resource. And whilst all these proposals are really, really beneficial to the economy, to the skills infrastructure, and they're part of the city vision, that have got really strong support, they are obviously far greater than the sum of their parts if we're able to do them all together. So we're very hopeful that we can get the vast majority of these proposals into our deal, if not all of them. I think it would be a great shame to take any of them out of there, but obviously that's in the hands of MHCLG.
Thanks very much, Ellen, and thank you once again for your tremendous contribution to bringing this town's deal to fruition. So, Sandra, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
I do have a question. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm very supportive of the projects that are identified in the bits as far as I can with the detail that has been provided. In the introduction, the bit also rightfully states the importance to enhance social mobility as well as addressing the wage disparity between those that come to work in the city and those that live in the city. The bit outlines a number of really good interventions that will create opportunities for self-employment and employment. Now, I would like to understand a little more what strategy the council will apply to create conditions which will ensure that these opportunities are actually taken up by residents who may at the moment be at low wage employment or are currently low skilled. So how will the council ensure that the interventions truly encourage social mobility and not simply create an additional pool for already high skilled workers or those who are already in those advantaged positions from outside Norwich?
No, that's a good question. Ellen, did you want to say anything about that?
It's just to say that we have to, obviously the Town Deal Board will be remaining in place to oversee the delivery of our Town Deal, whatever shape that takes when we have confirmation from MHCLG. And we have to draw up all kinds of things like engagement plans and comms plans when we have some certainty over delivery. But one of the key elements of this is that we want to make sure that the principles and the sort of objectives of the Good Economy Commission run through every single one of these projects like a stick of rock, really. And so it will be the job of the Town Deals Board to look at every part of this process as we go forward with delivery, in terms of contracting and engagement and communications, to make sure that we are delivering an inclusive economy and an opportunity for everybody to engage. And I think that's particularly relevant to the two skills infrastructure projects, and obviously making sure that the offer to both employed people, people who might find themselves redundant or looking at a change of career, and young people is absolutely key to this, to the success of those two projects. And they will be very closely monitored through the Town Deals Board, and also more broadly through the 2040 Vision Group.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen. Yeah, I think the jobs market is going to undergo very significant change, and in terms of generating new employment opportunities, I think some of the key sectors in terms of helping to grow the economy going forward should be in the areas of well-paid, well upskilled jobs, and I think that's particularly important. I think there's also a focus, the work done by Metro Dynamics, and I have to say also, register my thanks to them for the work that they've done, and the links with the Good Economy work that's being done. The Good Economy Commission has very much got its focus on social mobility, tackling deprivation, in rebuilding the economy after COVID, and so that's very much at the heart of the thinking. And you've raised a very important point there, Sandra. Thank you for doing that. Right. Any other questions before we go to the recommendation? Okay. Are we happy to accept the recommendation, please, and put your hands up if you are happy to do that? That's very good. I have the nod from Alex that she's seen everybody's hand up. And once again, are there any questions that anybody at this moment would want to ask of the below the line technical report on the Town's Deal bid? Okay, thank you for that. So let's move on to item 8. So this is on page 57, and it's the future housing commissioning. This is in the name of 2 cabinet members. Councillor Stannard is going to start, and Councillor Harris will follow with some further points from the report. So over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm going to talk about the early part around the housing need, the housing numbers, the pipeline, and Councillor Harris is going to talk about the HRA part of it. So, first of all, this council is committed to and is working hard to ensure the delivery of new housing for its citizens. Recent decades have seen a huge reduction in our housing stock due to right to buy and insufficient building projects coming forward to meet the need. Home ownership is now beyond the wildest dreams of most of the younger generation, and many members of what's called Generation Rent are learning what it means not to have good quality and secure housing. The council has been doing its part and doing its best to build or commission to be built more social housing and indeed more private sector housing for sale or rent, but we cannot do it alone. The challenge is too great. The overall housing need figure for the period 2015 to 2036 is 17,074, or put another way, 813 dwellings per annum. only 477 per annum are deliverable in Norwich itself, with the remainder being delivered in the wider Norwich policy area, which is why this is a multi-council issue. We also know that historically housing delivery has not kept pace with need. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a backlog of delivery of dwellings, and this will add to the pressure and the numbers needed to be delivered per annum going forward. We also know that the level of delivery of affordable housing in the city is particularly low. So this is a huge challenge. A revised strategic housing market assessment to 2041, now called the CENHNA, is currently being commissioned, and this will provide further figures and targets. So officers of the council have identified a pipeline of city sites as the basis of future housing development planning. 3 are identified as being able to be taken forward immediately. That's namely Marlcross Depot site, that's 156 to 200 dwellings, Argyle Street, 14 dwellings, and 3 Score Phase 3, 19 dwellings, 90, should I say, dwellings. Outline business cases for these 3 developments are in the exempt report. In addition, further opportunities have been considered, including land purchases that could deliver 139 dwellings. And also the council, in recognition that it cannot meet housing need by itself, recommends teaming up with a registered provider. This is very much about meeting housing need in the city and meeting the need of our residents going forward, and trying to address a really, really big problem. But it's also about regenerating those sites I was talking about, building communities, which is what we do. We don't just build homes, we aim to build communities. And we need to regenerate these areas of the city, which have lain as they are, some of them for some considerable amount of time. So I recommend these elements to you, and indeed the whole report, and I'll pass over now to my colleague, Councillor Harris, to talk more about the HRA aspects.
Thank you, Mike. Gail, over to you.
Thank you. Well, thanks to Councillor Stannard and his appraisal of the report. I think that I can say that we're both excited by the possibilities presented in the report. As a council, I think we must continue to make bold decisions. As an administration, we consider building more social housing as one of our key priorities. We must build on our recent successes of Goldsmith Street and Bullard Road, and we must build on our proud tradition of building council housing, which spans 100 years. With that in mind, a Housing Commission Board has been set up at officer level. This is undertaking a new approach to the commissioning of housing development and was tasked with identifying a future pipeline of sites and how these homes might be delivered. It's chaired by our Head of Housing. Any developments have to take into account the council's resources, priorities and housing need. This Tory government might well have lifted the borrowing cap on the HRA, but we still have to demonstrate that the overall borrowing of the council, both HRA and general fund, is affordable, prudent and sustainable. The irony is still not lost on me that the day after Goldsmith Street won the Sterling Prize, the government increased the Public Works Loan Board borrowing rate without any warning. The bottom line is that any housing development through the HRA still has to have an affordable business case. As Mike has already mentioned, the report states that 3 key sites have been identified to take forward immediately, and they could deliver approximately 260 new homes over the next 5 years. They are Marlcross Depot site, Argyle Street and 3 Schools Phase 3. In addition to these priority sites, further opportunities are being considered, including land purchase. A number of smaller city council-owned sites have been identified as having potential for delivery. Over a number of years, we have worked well in partnership with local registered providers of affordable housing. And for example, we've had real success with the development of some small garage sites which we owned. There are modelling details within this report based on delivering homes to an enhanced environmental standard, and there are a number of delivery options. We need to get the balance right, the balance of building to the highest environmental standards and the additional benefits that this will bring to our tenants in combating fuel poverty and the delivery numbers of much needed homes for so many. There are a number of recommendations on page 57. I do not intend to go through them line by line. I would, of course, ask you to support them all. This is part of our post-COVID-19 recovery plan and will play a significant part in helping the local economy to recover, employment opportunities and local spend. I have to thank officers for the considerable amount of work that has been undertaken to get us to what I consider to be the starting line. I make no apologies for the pressure that I've exerted in getting us to this point, and I will commit to you that I will continue to work with officers so that we can progress the building of these much needed homes and communities. It simply must be done. This is a work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gail. So very positive, strong report. And are there any officer comments at all on the report at this stage?
I don't have anything to add at this stage other than to note that actually, depending on where the questions go, you might get answers from quite a wide range, because actually it covers a broad spectrum of overall council activity, and clearly behind this report there's been quite a large number of officers inputting into various different aspects of it.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Graham. So any cabinet colleagues want to add any points to this report? Okay, thank you. Sandra, have you got a question you'd like to ask?
I do. I just want to quickly also raise again, I've said this previously, that I believe the implied drop from the report from passive house standard to the lower environmental enhanced standard is a false economy for the Council for Residents and for the Environment. I just wanted to raise that again. But in general, this is a very informative report, and I'm looking forward to see the detailed specialist advised on the different delivery options. The question I have is a more technical one. If you look at page 63, the ratio shows no planned development of 3-bed houses, despite this being the category of houses that the strategic housing market assessment states as the one in highest demand. I was just wondering if you could explain this discrepancy to me, please.
Okay, Andrew.
Yeah, I can explain that. The strategic housing market assessment, when it looks at housing need, will look at historic occupation of properties. Since the strategic housing market assessment was kind of formulated, we've had things such as a spare room subsidy come in, which has had a huge impact on how we allocate properties within the city and what people can actually bid for. In addition, we know that we've actually got significant numbers of 3-bedroom properties within our own stock, and there are people there that are under occupying those properties. So what we will see over a number of the next few years is people downsizing to 2-bedroom properties, and that's really what our huge housing need is for. That analysis comes from our waiting list, more from the strategic housing market assessment.
Okay. Does anybody want to pick up the point about the difference between passive house and I think level 5? I'm not sure if that's what the level is.
I think just to make a comment that we will continue to look at all of the options around the standards for delivery. We will look at the costs and benefits of those. Just to say though that we will take the principles of passive house when we're looking at the enhanced environmental standard. So we will look at a fabric first approach. We will look at using air tightness and mechanical vent heat recovery. What we might just not go for is the badge of the passive house. And particularly on certain sites, the orientation may mean that achieving passive house is just not cost effective.
Okay, Stephen.
I mean, the only thing I would add on top of Andrew's comment is that clearly there's a trade-off between affordability, maximising number of units and environmental build, and we need to strike that balance. And I think that's what the report is saying, that we think that balance is there. We you can get more units with a higher quality build, but not quite at passive house standards, and that's where we think the balance needs to be.
And for any of our viewers today who are scratching their heads around the spare room subsidy, they will know that better as the notorious bedroom tax, penalising people for having a little bit more space, and has caused hardship and difficulty for many people across the city. And If I was to be able to wave a magic wand at this very moment, the first thing I would abolish would be the bedroom tax. Okay, let's have a look at the recommendations, and they run from A to E. Are we happy to accept those recommendations? If you could show your affirmative view, that would be great. Alex, you got all the numbers? Very good. Okay, so thank you very much. And once again, are there likely to be any questions on the technical report below the line for this item? No? Okay, so that brings us to that point in the agenda where we move below the line. I'm assuming that everybody is happy to move below the line, and that means we now log off. Alex, can I ask how long you'll require to set things up for the second part of the meeting?
Well, I was going to check, Chair, if you had no questions for below the line, do you need to go?
I think we probably just do. I'll take Cabinet's view on this. Do we need to go below the line? Or are we happy with the fact that I've posed the question? Mike?
I'm sure previously, if there have been no issues or comments or questions on the below the line reports, then we've taken those as read and taken the main report in the main part of the public part of the meeting. But
Okay.
Alex is shaking her head. Have I got that wrong?
No, it's up to you. If you've no questions, then do you need to go? But it's whether you want to discuss it below the line.
Okay, well, let's take a view on that from colleagues. Are we happy to, since there were no questions, we've discussed the issues thoroughly above the line. So would we be therefore happy to take the below the line papers as read and therefore close this afternoon's meeting? Could you indicate if you're happy for that to happen? Okay, so that is unanimous. So that concludes this afternoon's business. Thank you very much for your attendance.